Welcome to this video on cybersecurity for bank directors and trustees. This video provides background information on cybersecurity and discusses the board's role in overseeing their bank's cybersecurity efforts. We'll begin by defining cybersecurity and then review vulnerabilities that may be exploited and lead to excessive cyber risk. We'll share details about common tools and techniques used by bad actors to steal sensitive information and disrupt bank operations. Next, we'll focus on how cyber threat information is gathered and how bank management can incorporate this information into the bank's information technology risk assessment.
We'll discuss cyber resiliency, or how a bank manages cyber risk to better withstand adverse situations. Then we'll highlight effective methods that management can use in overseeing relationships with third parties, including those that are critical to operations in cybersecurity. We'll conclude by talking about the board's responsibilities for directing the Information Security Program, or ISP, which includes cybersecurity.
Let's begin by answering the question, what is cybersecurity?
Cybersecurity is a process of protecting information by preventing, detecting, and responding to attacks. Information includes all customer and bank information in any medium or form. Cybersecurity is integral to safeguarding the confidentiality, integrity, and availability of bank and customer information.
Technology allows the banking industry to innovate and evolve. It enables a bank to provide a wide array of products and services to clients beyond the bank's physical locations. Simply put, technology and banking are inextricably integrated, which provides many advantages and efficiencies, but also introduces potential risks. These potential risks include increased cyber threats, which could result in financial loss, operational disruption, or damage to systems, assets, data, and capabilities.
Before we discuss cybersecurity risk management practices and protections, let's talk about examples of vulnerabilities that may be exploited. We'll talk about vulnerabilities in two broad categories: human failure and inadequate controls.
Vulnerabilities related to human failures arise when employees, former employees, third parties, or customers of the bank make mistakes or do not follow policy. We'll cover a few examples. One common example is someone falling prey to a phishing email. Malicious actors design phishing emails to look like they come from a legitimate source. A phishing email to a bank customer could appear to come from the bank and contain unique information, such as acknowledging a change in system requirements. However, it is in fact designed to collect information from the bank customer and potentially do harm if they open an attachment or click a link.
Perpetrators can obtain personal information about bank employees, third-party employees, or customers and use it to create more personalized phishing emails that recipients are more likely to believe are legitimate. Perpetrators obtain much of this information from social media or other publicly available internet sources.
Another example is a bank or third-party employee knowingly or unknowingly installing destructive software, providing credentials, or releasing sensitive information that compromises systems. When these acts are intentional, it's called an insider attack. One of the best ways to minimize these risks is through a security awareness and training program for bank employees and customers that raises awareness of how to identify threats and avoid situations that may result in a successful attack. For third-party employees, training and awareness expectations are typically defined within service-level agreements between the bank and the third party.
Vulnerabilities may also arise from inadequate controls within internal policies or procedures. Let's review a couple of examples.
Inadequate controls are often seen in a bank's monitoring practices and audit program. Weak security monitoring practices can allow cyber threats to go undetected. A weak audit program with insufficient control tests can compound the risk that cyber threats will go undetected. Weak security monitoring practices coupled with a weak audit program can increase the possibility of a successful cyber attack.
Further, inadequate controls over hardware or software can facilitate breaches rather than protect information as intended. Bank management can lower the risk of breaches by regularly updating software and firmware. This is known as patching. While bank boards would not manage a patching program, they may receive reports on management's changes to a patching program when they are found to be deficient, such as in an internal audit. Another example of inadequate controls is weak authentication practices. Authentication is the process of verifying a person's identity. There are three methods used to authenticate a person: verifying something a person knows, such as a password; verifying that the person has something, such as a token; or verifying something a person is, such as a biometric attribute. A biometric verification usually involves a fingerprint or iris scan. Using more than one type of authentication method is known as multi-factor authentication. Strong access and authentication control measures for bank employees, customers, and third parties can lessen the risk of unauthorized access. Measures may include password parameters, multi-factor authentication, and access limitations based on job duties.
Inadequate guidance on how employees should protect mobile devices or portable media may also create opportunities for theft or tampering. Without controls like data encryption or remote wipe capabilities, stolen devices may be vulnerable to data compromise. When tampering with a device, a perpetrator may install malware or reconfigure the device in some way that may harm the bank. A data backup server failing and not being replaced in a reasonable period is an example of a device failure and inadequate control. Another inadequate control example is when primary server data is corrupted but goes undetected, resulting in erroneous data being used in operations. Last, weak physical access controls may allow an unauthorized party to gain physical access to bank information or systems. A perpetrator may pretend to be an auditor or electrician to gain access to the server room or network access ports in the boardroom. This access could allow the individual to carry out additional attacks. Physical locks and other visitor access controls are effective in mitigating these risks. We've covered two vulnerability categories: human failure and inadequate controls, and identified practices that are effective in reducing these vulnerabilities. Examiners focus their reviews during the IT portion of the Safety and Soundness exam on the adequacy of cybersecurity controls because strong controls are effective in addressing many types of vulnerabilities and threats.
Now that we've covered some categories of vulnerabilities that may exist within a bank, let's talk about who may take advantage of these vulnerabilities. Organized crime groups and nation-states often exploit vulnerabilities within banks. These actors have the resources to fund highly trained people dedicated to conducting sophisticated attacks. Bad actors use multiple tactics, techniques, and procedures to achieve their objectives. We'll mention four. First, social engineering, which involves deceiving individuals into divulging confidential information or granting access. One example of social engineering that we mentioned earlier is phishing emails. Second, compromising a bank's software or hardware supply chains. Bad actors may use counterfeit hardware or insert malicious software code into third-party applications that allow the actor access to the bank's environments.
Third, denial of service attacks. A denial of service attack floods a system with data to make it unavailable. ATM networks, online and mobile banking, and branch connectivity can all be attacked in this way. Sometimes attackers use a denial of service attack as a distraction while the attackers simultaneously strike a different target. Fourth, malicious software or malware such as ransomware, adware, or viruses can also be used in cyber attacks. For example, attackers use ransomware to encrypt data so that the attacker can extort a payment for the keys to decrypt the data. Attackers also often steal sensitive information at the same time they are planting the malware so that they can threaten to publish the sensitive data if the ransom isn't paid. It's important to note that malware is often difficult to detect even with current antivirus and anti-malware applications. A bank's attack surface, that is, the number of available connections, continues to expand, which increases attack opportunities.
One unfortunate fact is that with an increasing number of connections, there are more points at which to attack, and the potential harm is high if even one attack proves successful.
Bad actors will often seek to steal data or money by taking advantage of people, who are sometimes the weakest link in a bank's cyber defenses. For instance, as we described earlier, attackers can gather information from the internet on a bank's employees, customers, or third-party employees. Then, they can use that information to engineer an attack, sending a phishing email as an example. The phishing emails may capture additional data or install malware that gathers or corrupts data or disrupts operations.
For board members, the key point is that vulnerabilities exist in the bank's employees, in its customers, and in third-party employees, and they can be exploited through multiple methods. Certain vulnerabilities are more easily exploited than others, and while threats are everywhere, prudent monitoring and continued vigilance will always benefit the bank.
The topics we have discussed thus far, vulnerabilities and attack methods, continue to evolve. So the question becomes, how can bank boards stay informed of cyber threats?
Typically, banks have internal reports that can be used to assess potential cyber threats. Reports can come from internal functions and departments, as well as from third-party cybersecurity companies. Examples include reports on deposit and loan transactions, anti-money laundering, product usage, audits, and reports from intrusion detection and prevention systems. The most used reports include information from monitoring activity across the organization.
Effective threat information monitoring also includes information from sources that specialize in monitoring cybersecurity threats broadly. Banks may obtain information from private or public sector organizations. Examples include the Financial Services Information Sharing and Analysis Center, commonly referred to as FFISAC, InfraGard, the U.S. Computer Emergency Readiness Team, or CERT, which is part of the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, or CISA, and the U.S. Secret Service Electronic Crimes Task Force. Some sources are free, but others charge a fee for their threat information.
Actionable information is specific enough for the bank to be proactive in adjusting its defenses to lower the risk of a successful attack, and offers particular solutions to vulnerabilities. Banks obtain actionable information from both internal and external sources. For example, bank management may learn of new social engineering schemes, such as phishing emails with the current subject as bait with ransomware attached, including the email addresses or domains that these emails are coming from. This actionable information can describe how the ransomware is installed and run to encrypt data.
The solution may include patching a software weakness, updating antivirus software, increasing the frequency of data backups, and training staff.
Actionable information provides bank management with the means to effectively assess and mitigate risks. In other words, management can use this information to determine the likelihood that a cyber threat will affect the bank and the impact severity if it does. After assessing potential cyber threats, management can establish cybersecurity controls to mitigate the risks. Identifying, measuring, monitoring, and controlling risks are key aspects of a bank's information security program, which the board reviews and approves. Management then informs the board periodically of new cyber threats and how the bank is defending itself against those threats.
Beyond understanding cyber threats and mitigating cyber risks, a bank must be resilient to cyber attacks, which is our next topic. Cyber resiliency is the ability to withstand or quickly recover from disruptive cyber events. The foundation for cyber resiliency can be established in elements of the board-approved information security program. These elements include managing and controlling risk and overseeing third-party arrangements.
Let's start with managing and controlling risk. A combination of controls is necessary to create resiliency, such as carefully designed contingency procedures and staff training in how to use these procedures in the event of a disruption. Regular procedure testing helps confirm that the bank can maintain operational continuity after a disruptive cyber event. The bank summarizes these controls in a contingency plan and continues to patch systems to achieve cyber resiliency.
As we said earlier, breaches are often made possible by ineffective patching. Comprehensive patch management is vital to ensure current updates and patches are applied to the bank's systems. In some banks, this task is outsourced to a third party, often as part of a managed services agreement. When any patching is outsourced, it is important to specify in writing which patching is the responsibility of bank personnel and which is the responsibility of the third party. This ensures that no systems are left unpatched because of misunderstood roles and responsibilities. It is also important for bank personnel to maintain sufficient knowledge of the outsourced functions to effectively review the third party's performance, and for board members to oversee management's efforts to keep systems patched.
Resiliency also depends on contingency planning. Remember, contingency planning is part of business continuity management. That is, the process to implement resilience, continuity, and response capabilities to safeguard employees, customers, and operations. One aspect of contingency planning is data backups. Think of a virus or ransomware destroying or encrypting data. Thorough contingency planning ensures that data backup files are readily accessible so the bank can recover critical business operations. Keep in mind, integrity testing for backup data is important as well. Not only must the data be backed up and accurate, but it also must be restored efficiently and effectively. If a bank has all of its data backed up, but it would take a month or more to restore, is this actually a useful backup? Contingency plans often call for separating backup information from the primary information storage. Separating the two sets of information helps protect the backup from an attack on the primary system.
Another aspect of contingency planning is establishing alternative connections to critical third parties. Think of an internet provider failure. This could prevent a bank from transmitting data to a third party for processing and impact operational continuity. This technological vulnerability could be reduced with alternative connections in the event the primary connection fails. This is known as redundancy.
Contingency plans are most effective when implemented by trained personnel and coordinated with third parties. Banks that perform well during disruptions have done so with plans to identify actions to take and assign responsibilities for those actions to appropriately trained staff. Often that training includes live tests and walkthrough examples, known as tabletop exercises.
Well-managed banks test controls independently and regularly to confirm they are functioning and resilient to cyber threats. Independence means that parties separate from those who manage the security programs perform the testing. Regular tests can include control audits, such as reviewing compliance with password parameters and reviewing controls over user access rights. Tests may also include vulnerability scans of controls, like firewalls, to make certain that unwanted communications or activities are blocked. Management ensures that testing occurs, and the board reviews the testing results and any corrective actions taken.
Throughout our discussion, we've been talking about third parties, both as a support for banks and as a potential risk. Each bank must conduct appropriate due diligence in selecting new third parties and must regularly monitor existing third parties. Essentially, the bank needs to confirm that the third party can perform the contracted services, which should include implementing appropriate measures to meet the objectives outlined in Appendix B to Part 364 of the FDIC Rules and Regulations, also known as the Interagency Guidelines Establishing Information Security Standards. The depth of the reviews will be greater for services with more importance or risk for the bank. As part of the reviews, banks may consider audits, test result summaries, or their own service experiences.
One final item to consider regarding third-party relationships is how they fit within the bank's incident response plan. A bank's incident response plan is integral to business continuity management. An incident response plan addresses bank and third-party responsibilities for incident monitoring, response, and reporting on attacks, intrusions, or destruction of information. Sufficient contracts with third parties will cover incident response expectations.
Now, let's focus our attention on a key board responsibility. The board is responsible for overseeing the development, implementation, and maintenance of the bank's information security program, which includes cybersecurity. The board directs management in assessing risks, managing and controlling risks, overseeing the bank's third parties, and adjusting the program to changes in risks or operations. Board direction and oversight contributes to the bank's cyber resiliency by embedding cybersecurity into the culture of the bank.
So how does a board determine whether its bank's cybersecurity program is appropriate? Well, one oversight method is reviewing management's reports on the status of the program. Such a report is required annually by Appendix B to Part 364 of the FDIC's Rules and Regulations. The report to the board or board committee will vary depending on the complexity of the bank's information security program, but it should discuss material matters relating to the information security program. Examples of items that might be addressed in this annual report include the risk assessment, risk management and control decisions, service provider arrangements, testing results, security breaches or violations, and change recommendations. Effective reporting includes management's insights, conclusions, actions, and recommendations on the program elements. This helps the board understand the risks and how management is addressing them.
Also, reporting aids the board in its budget and other resource allocation decisions for threat monitoring, third-party risk management, control implementation and maintenance, and training, thereby helping to maintain an effective information security program and improving cybersecurity.
Another method boards use to oversee cybersecurity is setting goals or a desired level of cybersecurity preparedness, often called a maturity level. Banks can use cybersecurity assessment tools that consider the bank's risk assessment process and mitigating controls to determine a maturity level for the bank. The board can then evaluate the maturity level against its risk appetite and consider more efficient or effective means for improving information and cybersecurity. The board can use these assessments for cybersecurity program oversight and strategic planning.
In summary, information security practices have evolved considerably with technology. Interconnected systems and unique delivery channels introduce additional vulnerabilities to operations and data. Along with technology innovations, the threat environment has evolved with ever-increasing numbers and types of threat actors working to exploit vulnerabilities with sophisticated attacks. As such, banks need a proactive cybersecurity governance program incorporated within an effective information security program to manage cybersecurity risks.
As we conclude, we'd like to remind you that the FDIC has additional videos and resources that can be found on the Banker Resource Center at www.fdic.gov. If you need additional information or have questions or comments, please contact your bank's case manager or email the FDIC at supervision@fdic.gov. Thank you for viewing this video. We hope you found this both useful and informative.